Heading 3. The second gate embracing the shadow. The peace Adisa found in the inner citadel was potent, a newfound sanctuary against the chaos of the external world. He moved with a distinct clarity, his energy no longer wasted on futile resistance against what he couldn't control. Yet, this very clarity began to reveal fissures within himself, unsettling truths he had long suppressed. The whispers, once seemingly external, now seemed to emanate from his very core, a dissonant chorus hinting at a deeper, more unsettling duality within his being. This was the prelude to Trial 2, the shadow self. His burgeoning magical abilities, once a source of wonder and excitement, began to manifest with an alarming unpredictability. A surge of protective energy, meant to ward off a petty thief, instead lashed out with raw, destructive force, shattering a nearby lamppost. A moment of frustration, and the air around him grew heavy, oppressive, causing those nearby to recoil in sudden unease. He saw the fear in their eyes, a chilling reflection of his own growing apprehension. This raw, untamed power was not the serene control he had cultivated, it was something wild, primal, and terrifyingly dark. He tried to compartmentalize it, to push it down, to deny this destructive potential. He had always seen himself as a force for good, a protector, a beacon of justice. This darker aspect, this capacity for harm, was anathema to his meticulously crafted self-image. He fought against it, just as he had once fought against the demolition of Momongozi's store, but this battle was entirely internal, a brutal war against his own nature. The more he resisted, the stronger it grew, like a beast denied its rightful place, clawing relentlessly at the edges of his consciousness. He saw flashes of anger, envy, and even a chilling indifference he recognized from the very developers who had callously raised Momongozi's market. Was this truly him? Was this darker capacity an intrinsic part of his soul? The unseen hand of Metamon, however, had orchestrated this very confrontation, knowing that only through direct encounter could Adisa truly integrate these fragmented aspects of himself. One night, a vivid, unsettling dream consumed him, pulling him into a landscape that was both eerily familiar and utterly alien. He found himself in a forest, impossibly light and airy, almost ethereal. Its ancient trees whispered in hushed tones as he moved through them, not lost, but unknowing, guided by 1. Something unseen yet undeniably present. Bushes parted easily before him, yielding to his passage. Then, as if revealing a well-guarded secret, the temple, no, the school, emerged. It was vast, towering like a cathedral, invisible to the untrained eye but unmistakable to his heightened perception. He knew, with a certainty that transcended logic, that he was dreaming, yet he clung to the moment, unwilling to wake. Steadying himself, he ascended the grand steps toward immense double doors that stretched impossibly high into the sky. He was dwarfed beneath their weight, a speck before their towering, ancient presence. To his right stood a massive lion-like statue, its form chiseled with ancient precision. He turned his head and saw another mirroring it on the left. Then, suddenly, the statue to his right moved. Its head turned slowly, deliberately, and in a voice both deep and knowing, it rumbled, "You made it. Welcome. Go on up." His heart pounded, but the voice held no malice. It was an invitation, resonant with an ancient welcome. Gathering himself, he approached the doors, preparing to knock, but before his fingers could even reach them, they opened, alive, sensing him, responding to his intent. He stood there, breath held, anticipation rising like a mist. Beyond the threshold stretched a long corridor, dark and unknowable, leading into depths unseen. It should have terrified him, but curiosity was stronger, a magnetic pull he couldn't resist. After all, he was dreaming. What was there to fear? Or was he? Could this be real in another realm or dimension, hidden to normal earthly eyes and unawareness? Moving forward, he felt shadows ripple on either side, like silent, watchful sentinels. Then he saw it, a figure, cloaked in profound black, gliding effortlessly within what now felt like the interior of a vast cathedral. He followed, drawn by an unspoken command. It drifted toward the right, past an altar where candle flames danced like whispered secrets, their fragile light barely disturbing the encroaching gloom. As he rounded the corner, everything shifted. The grand chamber dissolved, giving way to towering shelves, endless volumes stacked upon one another, the ancient library. Rows upon rows of books stretched upward in impossible spirals, their collective wisdom bound in aged leather and brittle ink. Was this the Akashic Library, the repository of all knowledge, past, present, and future? His fingers brushed over the spans of old text as he walked, drinking in the profound presence of knowledge beyond time. Then, a subtle shift in the air, a slight gust, as if something unseen had entered. He paused, scanning the vast space. Nothing. And then, suddenly, a skeletal hand emerged from the fold of that figure's dark cloak. "2." It pointed. Then tapped on a book directly in front of him, beckoning him to pull it free. His fingers reached, hesitating, but the book seemed eager, almost alive. It floated effortlessly from the shelf, landing gently upon the desk before him. Again, the skeletal hand tapped, insistent, each tap a silent demand. His gaze followed, reading the title etched onto the cover, Esoteric.
First prison.
Tap.
You'd be free
Tap.
for good.
Tap.
But the truth?
Esoteric.
The higher you climb, the more cunning the prison becomes. The walls become invisible. The chains are no longer metal. They're psychological. And the jailer is often disguised as your own reflection. Every new level has new devils. That's not just a saying. It's a warning. And it's a promise. You see, life is not a single battlefield. It's a tower. And each floor is guarded by a more evolved monster than the last. Some of them are people. Some of them are problems. But the most terrifying ones, they live inside of you. The first devil you faced may have been poverty. The next, entitlement. Then perhaps doubt, disguised as logic. Comfort, dressed as peace. Or betrayal, smiling like a friend. And for those who dare to rise, those who dare to keep climbing, you'll discover that each level doesn't just test your skill. It tests your identity. Can you let go of who you were to become who you're called to be? Can you sacrifice comfort to claim clarity? Can you endure being misunderstood, hated, envied, and still walk with honor? Because as you rise, fewer people understand you. The room gets lonelier, the air gets thinner, and the voices get louder, not in support, but in accusation. You've changed. You forgot where you came from. You think you're better than us. And that's the trap. That's the devil of approval. The temptation to descend back to the level where everyone claps. Because that's where they're comfortable. But comfort is the assassin of greatness. And applause is often the lullaby that puts potential to sleep. Let me remind you of something grim. Something powerful. No matter how high you...
Esoteric. He did not know the word, had never consciously encountered it in waking life. Yet here it was, presented to him with undeniable urgency, by a figure that was both a silent guide and a harbinger of the unknown within him. A strange, powerful awareness struck him, and in the liminal haze between dream and waking, he forced himself up, just long enough to scribble the word onto paper before sleep, heavy and insistent, reclaimed him. Back in the dream, the figure sat, silent, the skeletal hand still tapping against the book's yellowed pages. Adisa stepped closer, drawn by a quiet yet insatiable wonder, the profound feeling that something vast, something powerful, something beyond the limits of ordinary knowledge, and perhaps beyond the limits of his perceived goodness, awaited within those fragile, ancient sheets. He woke with a jolt, the dream clinging to him like a shroud. The philosophical texts he'd been given, once abstract concepts, now pulsed with new, chilling meaning. Duality permeates all existence, He understood light and shadow, creation and destruction, Apollo and Dionysus, reason and passion. He understood, with a chilling clarity that resonated deep within his bones, that his attempts to embrace one half of himself while rejecting the other were the true source of his internal torment. He was like the human impulse that instinctively divides, embracing one while rejecting the other, creating a false war within his own soul. The esoteric book, he now knew, represented the hidden, uncomfortable truths of his own being, the shadow he had so desperately tried to deny. Revelation, the unified soul. The path to mastery, he realized with a profound sigh, wasn't about choosing between light and dark, between reason and passion, but about integrating them. It was about becoming whole. He began to observe the subtle oscillations within himself, the ebb and flow of constructive and destructive impulses, of courage and fear, of selfishness and altruism. He recalled the ancient image of the yin and yang, each containing a seed of its opposite, perpetually flowing into each other, a perfect, dynamic balance. He thought again of the 3. Babalawo's words about the river, how it could nourish the land or erode stone, depending on its path. Its essence was flow, not a singular, fixed purpose. Slowly, painstakingly, Adisa began to acknowledge his shadow. He stopped fighting the darker currents of his power, instead seeking to understand their source, their purpose, their raw, untamed energy. He allowed himself to feel the surge of anger, not to act upon it destructively, but to recognize its raw, transformative energy, to understand its message. He saw that his strength wasn't weakened by this vulnerability, by this open acceptance, but became more authentic, more profound. His intelligence wasn't compromised by emotion, but transformed into a deeper, more empathetic wisdom. This was not a resolution of contradictions, but a transcendence. He wasn't becoming good or evil, he was becoming whole, a complete being. He contained multitudes, a universe within himself, capable of both creation and destruction, of light and shadow, of boundless potential. By embracing this full spectrum of his nature, his magic, once erratic and terrifying, began to stabilize. The destructive force, when acknowledged and understood, could be channeled, refined, even transformed into a potent protective barrier or a cleansing fire. The whispers, once discordant and unsettling, began to harmonize, revealing a deeper unity underlying the apparent contradictions of his own being. Adisa was learning that true power lay not in denying who he was, but in accepting all of it, making peace with the inherent patterns that defined him. The forging continued, shaping him into something far more formidable than he had ever imagined. Metamon's influence, the whisper in the shadows. Adisa's journey, however, was not merely a solitary ascent, a private battle of self-discovery. His deepening understanding, his very act of embracing the esoteric, had not gone unnoticed by the architect of his trials. Metamon. To believe his influence was confined to a forgotten domain, a distant throne, was the first, fatal mistake. His presence was not bound by location, it permeated the very fabric of reality, a subtle yet insistent current, weaving itself into the minds of those who unknowingly opened doors they were never meant to cross. For Adisa, the whispers that had once been distant ancestral echoes now carried a different resonance, a quiet thought at the edges of his perception. It burrowed deeper, growing louder with each moment he, the unwitting seeker, acknowledged it. This was how. 4. Metamon tested the unknowing, how he determined who was ready to step into the unraveling, not to break them, but to forge them in the crucible of truth. Metamon did not force himself upon the world, he merely waited, watching as knowledge, like a potent catalyst, spread. Watching as the minds of those who craved more began to be refined beneath the weight of what they could not fully grasp, preparing them for an existence beyond ordinary imagination. The mark of Metamon. Adisa, having strayed closer to forbidden wisdom, began to notice patterns that defied ordinary logic. Voices, speaking in languages he did not understand, drifted on the wind. Shadows shifted when no light moved, coalescing into fleeting, impossible shapes in the periphery of his vision. The mark was not physical, it was deeply ingrained within him, a lingering, inescapable pull towards something greater, something terrifying, something inevitable. It was the undeniable call of his true destiny, a profound, gnawing curiosity that superseded all earthly concerns. He grew restless, driven by an inner imperative he couldn't name. He was haunted not by ghosts, but by thoughts that were not entirely his own, by a profound, gnawing curiosity that superseded all earthly concerns. His dreams, once a conduit to ancient libraries, now twisted into landscapes of impossible geometry, ancient corridors stretching into infinity, shifting rooms of ink and parchment, walls pulsing with unseen movement, as if the very architecture of reality was breathing. He did not know why, but he knew he must go deeper. He knew he must find him. The unfolding of power. For Adisa, who had consciously accepted the whispers, who no longer fought the unraveling of his old self, his transformation began in earnest. He no longer learned as ordinary men did, he absorbed, his mind expanding beyond human limits. Patterns once invisible became painfully clear, reality itself bending to accommodate his new form of understanding. The world, once solid, now rippled with unseen currents he could perceive and, sometimes, subtly manipulate. But with this extraordinary power came a price, a chilling whisper of what he was leaving behind. He was no longer fully of this world. The deeper he went, the more tenuous his connection to ordinary life became. He found himself struggling for common words, his 5. Voice occasionally stolen by the sheer weight of what he now comprehended, the mundane becoming alien, distant. He understood the chilling truth of those who vanished entirely, their existence swallowed by the unseen spaces where Metamon's influence lingered strongest, a necessary sacrifice for an unimaginable evolution. Final reflection, the shadow that watches. He understood now, with a clarity that cut to his very soul. You do not seek Metamon. He seeks you. And when he does, the choice is never truly yours. You either unravel, or you become forged. The forsaken echoes, those who failed Metamon's trial. Not all who sought Metamon reached enlightenment. Many faltered at the gates, their minds splintering under the crushing weight of what they were never meant to grasp. Failure, Adisa now knew, was not death, it was worse. He had seen glimpses of them in the periphery of his new perception, spectral figures haunting the edges of his dreams. They were the ones who could not withstand the forging. The hollowed seekers, fractured minds and shattered wills. Those who failed did not return the same. Something essential was missing within them, some unseen piece of their essence stripped away, replaced by a gnawing emptiness. They existed, but they did not truly live, a husk of their former selves, whispering half-formed truths in forgotten tongues, speaking words that made no sense to those around them. Their eyes did not focus. Their voices carried strange echoes, as though another, unseen entity spoke through them, a chorus of fragmented minds. They were marked, permanently bound to the realm they sought but could not fully enter. They were the remnants, the chilling monuments to the price of ambition and the unforgiving nature of true transformation, left to serve as a stark warning to any who dared to follow. Adisa woke with a jolt, the dream clinging to him like a shroud. The philosophical texts he'd been given, once abstract concepts, now pulsed with unsettling clarity. Duality permeates all existence, light and shadow, creation and destruction, Apollo and Dionysus, reason and passion. 6. For so long, he had divided himself, embracing one aspect while rejecting the other, unknowingly creating an internal war. But the esoteric book, that ancient text, was not just knowledge, it was a mirror. A challenge. A whispered truth, the shadow is not the enemy. It is the untapped potential, the raw force waiting to be understood. To integrate it was not to surrender to chaos, but to wield it, to let the light of consciousness illuminate what had been buried. To increase awareness of self, of reality beyond mere perception. And if that required starting from the basics, So be it. Humility kicks in when you face the truth of your own resistance. The ego flinches, embarrassed at the prospect of going back to square one. But challenge it, make it a game. You think it's easy? Then prove it. Do it for 90 days. Let's see how you get on. Put the choice back on the ego, like a masterful chess player setting the board. Your move. 7. Page 7 of 7. 2,566 words. English, US. Editor suggestions, showing 100%. Fit. Give feedback to Microsoft.
I will.